Welcome back to the agenda. So during the festive season, there is an increase in festivities, parties, in family gatherings, in work functions, and all sorts of braais. But it's also a time when some people are more likely to consume alcohol beyond their limits. Now, it's been proven that alcohol consumption has a direct impact on the high levels of road accidents. However, the alcohol industry uses responsible drinking messaging as a central element of its corporate social responsibility. But we're asking this morning, is it enough? How big a role should the liquor industry play in discouraging excessive and irresponsible consumption of alcohol? Well, to discuss this, we are joined by Mr. Lucky Ntimane, who is the convener at the National Liquor Traders. Mr. Ntimane, good morning to you and welcome to the agenda.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity.
I wonder if what we're asking for is almost a paradoxical question, where the liquor industry wants to sell, but we're also asking you to tell people to drink responsibly. Are we asking too much from the industry?
I don't think we're asking too much, but if you look at the responsibility to sell alcohol on its own, it's a much bigger responsibility. That's why the process to acquire a license is not an easy one. It is often difficult and it's very costly. So anyone who then assumes that role and responsibility of selling alcohol ought to understand that that carries a large responsibility, and part of that responsibility is to ensure that alcohol is sold in a responsible manner. But I mean, we've seen recent incidents that talks to drinking and driving, underage drinking. So those are the things that a liquor trader ought to be aware of and guard against, selling alcohol in a manner that is going to give rise to those negative issues that we've seen.
Yeah, but talk to me about where, your association, for instance, and conversations that happen within various bodies like Vinpro and such, right, about where your responsibility then lies in ensuring that we curb the culture of excessive drinking and alcoholism in the country. I mean, at what point does that responsibility begin for you and where does it end?
I think the issue of irresponsible usage of alcohol or abuse thereof in South Africa has been largely ignored. And I think we saw during the lockdowns, when people were looking for alcohol in wrong places, that actually we have a problem. People drink alcohol for various sorts of reasons, but we also need to understand the underlying factors that leads people to drink alcohol in the way they do. I think we've managed to sweep this matter under the carpet, and I think it's about time that we start having conversations with like-minded people, with relevant organizations to fully understand the root causes of why people drink alcohol the way they do. So because we represent traders, liquor traders, taverns that is in the township space, means that we have access to over 39,000 taverns across the country. And also we have a footfall, people that are coming into our doors on a monthly basis of between 8 and 10 million. So that is a large number of people that we have influence and access to, and we need to be able to communicate the right messaging of drinking alcohol in a responsible manner to that audience that we have. But issue of alcohol abuse, I feel that as a country, we need to start having this conversation. We need solutions. The alcohol industry cannot come with solutions on its own. We need to partner with the relevant organizations to ensure that we are able to address this matter once and for all.
I wonder if maybe we use terminology and we actually don't understand what it is that we're talking about, right? When we say it's the responsibility of the alcohol industry, or anyone for that instance, even myself as a media practitioner, to encourage responsible drinking, do we even know what responsible drinking looks like? I mean, how do you define responsible drinking?
It's funny that actually I had a conversation with some of your colleagues this morning around the issue of responsible drinking. But our view is that actually it should be moderate drinking because you need to be able to measure what it is that you're consuming. And I think that can be best done if you look at as an issue of moderate drinking, because responsible drinking, I think it's a word that is loose, and it's not easy to measure what a person needs to consume for that person to be measured or cleared as a responsible drinker. But I think moderate drinking takes into consideration the fact that you need to consider various factors. Am I going to consume alcohol and get behind the wheel? Am I going to drink alcohol and go and do certain works that require me to be sober, for example? So I think we need to be talking about what is moderate drinking and how do you address it and how do you inculcate that methodology into a practical consumer. Consumers need to know what is enough for them to consume when they go out at night or when they are drinking and having a good time with their families.
Is there something to be said about the advertising of alcohol? I mean, I think this is a debate that's gone on for many years in South Africa about whether or not we should be advertising alcohol. And one of the things I've noted, and I think many of us have as well, if you go into the township, for instance, Soweto, and there's a big billboard for an alcohol brand, it's showing friendship, sharing, bonding. It looks all very aspirational. when that's not always the reality of what it looks like on the ground? I mean, should we, even in the messaging that we put out as the alcohol industry yourselves, really then start bringing in the reality of what the consumption of alcohol really looks like in our homes?
I don't think there's a problem with advertising. I mean, you see a lot of crimes in South Africa, you see people that are taking drugs, and yet drugs are not advertised. I think it's an issue of coming back to making that decision that if you're going to consume alcohol, you're going to do so in a moderate or in a responsible manner, as it were. I think, yes, certainly the industry can do well, can do more in terms of educating people that are making the choice to consume alcohol, that they do so in a manner that befits, the product that to sell. We understand that the product to sell is very sensitive. But I think advertising, as it were, has nothing to do with people abusing alcohol also. I mean, people that are drinking alcohol cannot certainly be linked to an advert that they have seen, or having seen a jolly advert that will make them to say, now I want to drink more because I've seen this advert. We need to understand that alcohol is a social lubricant. It makes people to be jolly, it makes people to be merry, but certainly it is not meant to be abused. And we have seen that people in South Africa tend to abuse it.
Yeah, I think just lastly, and this is actually a double-edged sword question that I'm asking you then. How can we as the public hold the liquor industry to account when we see things get out of hand? And should we? I think that's what I mean by a double-edged sword. Is it your responsibility?
I think we need to maybe use an African analogy in terms of describing what needs to happen in that alcohol space. It takes a child to raise a village, and we've seen instances where we as communities, we as society, I'm a parent myself, have let certain issues happen under our watch, and we haven't done anything about it. We know an uncle who consumes alcohol, beyond what is required. We know an aunt, we know a cousin. But what are we doing about it? We certainly cannot sit in a corner and expect a miracle to come from the alcohol industry. I think it's a collective effort. We as society, because we even in the alcohol industry see ourselves as part of the community before we are business people. So I think our actions must be guided by that Africanism that, we are there for each other, that a child of my neighbor is also my child.
You talk about children. I think one of the saddest images I've seen on social media, and I saw this quite recently, of young children in a village walking across the village. I'm talking about kids as young as 13, 14, walking around the village holding green bottles and drinking, girls and boys. And the reality is we're seeing more and more of this in our communities. What do we do about that?
It's a matter
It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a parent myself. My firstborn is 17 years old. When you see those images, you don't put in ahead of being someone who works in the industry, but you put in ahead of being a parent. It is heartbreaking that kids are seeking solace in alcohol, that they are finding alcohol to be part of their entertainment at such an early age. And there's a study that was done by the alcohol industry that determined that people start experimenting in alcohol between the age of 13 and 14.
Sure.
So that is very worrying. So we need to be able to have education running in schools at an early age so that we nip this in the bud. I think if we look at the conversation that, maybe we need to increase the drinking age from 18 to 21, that will not solve any problem, because we know that people that start drinking alcohol do so at an early age. So this is something that we cannot avoid. And we know out there that there are liquor traders that are putting the lives of our people just behind their profits. So profits is what drives them. And we're saying to them, they do not deserve to even have liquor licenses. And we like to commend the swift nature of how the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, moved to suspend the license of that Rasmatas Tavern in the Eastern Cape that was found to have sold alcohol, to minors. This is almost like a saga where 3 kids lost their lives, and it's an unfortunate incident. And we send our condolences to those families. I mean, we shudder to think that the memory of those families on the 25th of December is that they have lost kids in a tavern, a tragedy. It is shocking. It is disheartening. It should not have happened. Yet again, we talk about minors and a tavern in the same sentence. It should not be.
Yeah, I really hope that the liquor industry is keeping a close eye on what the liquor boards are doing to regulate these outlets. But I am out of time. I think what I do want to talk about though is where the industry is sitting. We've wrapped up 2023, or we're wrapping up 2023. It was a year, I think, or 2022 rather. One would hope that it was a year of recovery for businesses and job creation in the industry, where we saw the industry taking major knocks in 2020 and 2021. Where are you now? Are you helping South Africans put food on the table?
I think we are somehow recovering. We are putting food on the table. But I think the load shedding is actually taking a bit of that food that we have on the table, because no one wants to go into a dark tavern, no one wants to walk in the streets of the township when it is dark. So load shedding is actually taking us 3 steps backwards, when, I mean, the restrictions, the relaxation of those restrictions had taken us 2 steps forward. So we are not seeing that recovery that we expect. We are now on stage 4 load shedding. It means that our taverns will not be able to fully operate. It is a worry for us, but we're not complaining. We are a resilient industry. Tavern owners are very strong and will ride out the storm.
Yeah. An absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for making time, and we'll catch up again as we talk about responsible and, as he says, moderate drinking in South Africa. That there, Mr. Lucky Ntimane, the convener at the National Liquor Traders.